Army of XRP, I have an urgent leak for you guys here today that comes from none other than Donald Trump and the Federal Reserve. And yes, there are a lot of other things that are going on that will have enormous implications on the market. I have this information for you today. I'm going to cover everything for you guys in today's video, and I'm going to really delve deep into what actually matters. Now, the first news article that I want to cover is what President Trump was tweeting on his Truth Social account not too long ago. Through his words, he was essentially stating that there was no possibility of victory for Ukraine in the conflict with Russia since Biden would not permit Ukraine to fight back. Now, this is a really fascinating shift in messaging, going from peace talks to now stating that Ukraine should perhaps actually go on the offensive. This is a really significant shift. That is very intriguing. In addition, it seems to be giving me the impression that the peace talks that were being held between Russia, Ukraine, Europe, and the United States are beginning to fall apart. It would appear that President Trump is now beginning to work toward the opposite direction with the intention of actually beginning to fight back and attempting to reclaim ground. We are going to have a look at that to see whether or not that is the kind of course of action that he intends to pursue, how that is going to appear at this point. It was a pretty ambiguous use of words. In my opinion, however, it appears to be a type of conditioning, particularly when taking into consideration the way in which politicians typically speak prior to major events. Once again, Trump has a tendency to keep you in the dark about his next move. There is a possibility that this is something that is being intentionally misunderstood. However, I believe that the most significant information that we do have pretty good indications of what is going on is the Federal Reserve, and more especially what is going on with Governor Lisa Cook. All right, earlier today, Lisa Cook posted on her social media account that she will not be bullied. This was either this morning or yesterday, which was actually extremely late. In response to Trump's announcement that he had discovered forged mortgage documents belonging to a federal governor named Lisa Cook, he made the decision to stand down. He also threatened that he would pursue criminal charges against Cook if she did not quit, which is essentially the same thing as extreme blackmail. That is without a doubt the case. President Trump is utilizing this to achieve a goal that I believe all of us would like to achieve, which is to lower interest rates, particularly in the cryptocurrency and investment markets. Whether you love it or hate it, Trump is using this to accomplish this goal. We are aware of what that signifies, thus, this was the case. In response to that, Lisa Cook provided an initial answer this morning. We did receive a few different updates regarding the situation that is now taking place. As a result of the Department of Justice's announcement that they intend to conduct an investigation into Fed Governor Cook, DOJ officials are currently pressing Fed Chair Powell to remove her from her position. At this point, Jerome Powell is the focus of attention. Can you tell me how Jerome Powell will react to this? Is he going to simply keep his mouth shut? Are they going to take this matter to court and fight it out? We will go to observe. The United States of America has announced a large trade deal with the European Union, which includes the imposition of tariffs on automobiles of 50% rather than 25%, as well as an investment arrangement in the United States of America worth $750 billion. This is a big victory for the United States of America. However, keeping this in mind, I believe that the Federal Reserve is once again some to run. Now, I performed some additional research into Hamak and what her prior research has shown, as you may already be aware. I will say that this particular piece of news did get a lot of attention because people are concerned and using this as an indicator that maybe we are not going to cut rates. Statements have been made to determine whether or not she was one of the people who were pro-rate cuts or was opposed to rate cuts. It turns out that Hamak has been someone who has consistently been opposed to cutting rates. So there hasn't been any significant change in that regard. But I want to bring to your attention the fact that this is only 1 out of 8, isn't it? There are 8 people working at the Federal Reserve, and this is the only one of them who is against lowering interest rates. One of the 8 members of the Federal Reserve who are opposed to lowering interest rates is Governor Cook of the Federal Reserve. At the Federal Reserve, there are already 4 additional members who are truly interested in lowering interest rates. It is kind of like a Fed Governor Cook here, Hamak. It is pretty much that. It has been brought to my attention that Jerome Powell and another man whose name I do not know do not wish to reduce interest rates at this time. Therefore, it is only natural that if a cook is fired and Hamak is tossed out of the kitchen, you are now under the watchful eye of the Department of Justice and possibly even Trump. In order for us to proceed, all that is required is for one of them to retire and be replaced by someone who is in favor of rate decreases at this point. Exactly. To To put it another way, that is basically where we are at the moment. And I wouldn't argue that it is necessarily a stalemate because it appears that Trump is the aggressor at the moment. You know, getting the Department of Justice to look in to the federal governor Cook. In the course of our investigation, we are going to see whether anything comes to light. Because Lisa Cook has made it abundantly apparent that she is not going to be pressured into abdicating her position, I am curious about what is going to take place here. Is she going to act in accordance with what she has said, or is she going to finally, stolen and said, okay, I'm going to step down because this is getting too serious? I mean, if they find anything on her, it's going to be pretty horrible for her. And you know that Trump is pulling out all the stops. You know, he is looking into the massive construction project that the Federal Reserve was managing, which was a $5 billion project. This construction project is something that is simply ludicrous and ridiculous. And, there is a price point there. The fact that he is investigating Lisa Cook is being investigated by him. It is highly likely that they will initiate an investigation into Hamak as well as anyone else who voices opposition to reducing tariffs. It appears that they are interested in conducting an investigation into these persons. I just wanted to go back and circle back real quick on the European Union and the 15% tariffs and the $750 billion investment plan. To say the least, it is becoming pretty serious now. I just wanted to go back and circle back. To put it another way, depending on how you look at it, this might be considered positive, negative, or whatever. When compared to 25% tariffs, 15% tariffs are going to result in a decrease in revenue coming into the United States over the long term. This is something that you should keep in mind. The $750 billion investment package, which was intended to kind of offset a lot of those tariffs, did make it possible for them to receive a lot more money up front. To put it simply, what is taking place here is there is now a greater amount of pressure being placed on the government of the European Union to come up with a large sum of money rather than these automobile manufacturer. That is, in essence, the pressure that is currently being shared between the European federal government and the automobile industry. In this case, rather than focusing solely on the automotive industry at a rate of 25%, that is exactly what has recently occurred. What do I believe is going to take place in this situation? Isn't it true that there are a lot of moving parts? As of right now, we are dealing with a number of issues, including the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, tariffs, the Federal Reserve, and all of this interest rate speculation. Isn't it true that there are a lot of moving parts? It is therefore a lot more evident what people are having a lot of trouble forecasting precisely when this bull run is going to finish, exactly when it is going to, basically cease gaining pace. This becomes a lot more clear when you truly put everything together. Now, when we do look at the charts, what we see very clearly is that from a technical standpoint, we are extremely well positioned to actually start moving higher, right? This is something that we can see pretty clearly. The Stochastic Relative Strength Index, RSI, is currently oversold. Incredible. Just now, we were in a circumstance that was very similar. We hosted a pleasant rally. You are aware that we started at the bottom, which was 274, and worked our way up to the top, which is 338, right? I mean, if you had been purchasing when we were oversold right here, guys, or at any other point in time over this period, and then you sold any place up here when we were overbought, you would have been doing exceptionally well than you would have been otherwise. As a result, we are currently in a situation that is extremely like to this one, in which we have a time period during which we are able to make purchases here. I would want to bring to your attention the fact that the most recent T oversold we experienced occurred from the 26th of July all the way through to the 4th of August. Is that correct? I was doing that if you were following my channel and my crypto crusaders, which means that I was buying here, I was buying here, I was buying there. During this period of time, which was, like a week and a half or so, there were a lot of opportunities to buy many different dips. And I was doing that every single one of those days that were in the negative. And then, of course, when we moved up, I did take gains and it was wonderful. We are up somewhere between 35 and 40% as a result of the utilization of leverage. And as a result, you are aware that there is a great deal of money to be earned there. Also, we are looking extremely well at this location. To put it simply, I am extremely enthusiastic about this. I believe that there is going to be a great deal of potential here as well. And it is not out of the question that we will reach lower lows. Additionally, I would like to make that point abundantly obvious. It is not always all positive and positive all the time. Not going to be like, oh, we're going to the moon, $10,000 per XRP. That's not going to happen. That is not the truth here. There are a lot of things that